And above all, thank most of you in the audience, the students at the School of Public Policy, with whom it's been my delight and honor to spend the past year. My talk is directed first and foremost to you. Needless to say, you're not to blame for this lecture if you don't like it. But if you do see any merit in it, you can claim part of the credit, because it is in some sense the product of my time here in your midst. I offer it as a kind of overview or meditation on the proper understanding of public policy in both its glories and its limitations. A good place to begin thinking about these matters is to consider the title and contents of a book written almost 100 years ago. American journalist Walter Lippmann's influential book entitled Drift and Mastery. Drift and Mastery was a signal work of the progressive era, published in 1914, the same year that saw the founding by Lippmann and others of a magazine called The New Republic, then as now a flagship of liberal and progressive thought. Lippmann intended his book as an expression of the self-confident progressive ideal, excuse me, the belief that the infirmities of the human condition were no longer a permanent given, but lay within the ability of human agency to alter and transform, and that the march of scientific knowledge, including social scientific knowledge, about the optimal ordering of human society, was granting humans an ever-expanding power to control their circumstances. That was the mastery of the title of the book. And the alternative to this optimistic vision of human progress, guided by science and social intelligence, was not liberty or spontaneous order, but drift. And who could be in favor of something as amorphous and passive as drift? So the title really kind of skews the case. But Lippmann was writing at the triumphant moment, the climax of a long century of growing optimism. But at the end of that very year, 1914, the high point was in the process of passing forever. With the onset of the First World War, Europe plunged into a bloody, self-destructive cataclysm from which it has never entirely recovered. To Europeans and Americans alike, the First World War stood as a rebuke to all doctrines of inevitable progress, and indeed for some to the idea of progress itself. The mastery of which Lippmann had spoken so breezily had proven far more elusive and double-edged than he could have suspected. After the senseless butchery of the First World War, a level of mass mayhem entirely disproportionate to its somewhat obscure causes, it seemed that mastery had a shadow side, a negative component that grew in direct proportion to the acquisition of mastery itself. It was as if every form of mastery, every advance in human capability and power contained the seeds of its precise opposite, as if the power to do good was always shadowed by an equal and opposite power to do evil. At best, the advance toward ever greater mastery seemed now like an ascent upon an ever-narrowing ladder. The higher the altitude, the greater the vulnerability to catastrophic fall. One might consider whether this paradox of progress shadowed by its opposite holds in other realms, such as our progress in medical science. There, our confidence might seem more secure. Whatever chastenings the modern world has received as a result of wars and other violence, we continue to believe in the rightness and efficacy of using modern science and medicine to prolong human life, so long as, of course, as the life in question is deemed to be of the requisite quality. Only let an accredited research scientist stand before us and float the proposition that any scientific procedure, however morally troubling, might hold some promise for the cure of diabetes, cancer, Parkinson's disease, dementia, herpes, or the common cold, and the matter's settled. The American public wants it. They're only too happy to give the man in the lab coat whatever he wants. The thought that such scientists, like other humans, might have a limited perspective on the matter, might occasionally be motivated by unvarnished self-interest, seems never to occur to our famously skeptical journalists. But there is, of course, real force behind the scientists' appeals. No one who suffers from an incurable disease or has seen a loved one suffer and die from one can be immune to them. It is in our nature to cherish life. Even those of us who are convinced that a better existence awaits us beyond the grave are nevertheless naturally inclined to cling to our earthly existence. Such an inclination is sure to be all the more intense in those who hold no such belief, or hold it only tenuously. And it is an undeniable fact that remarkable medical breakthroughs occur all the time, so the hope for cures cannot be dismissed as a vain one. Nor does it help matters that we live in an era in which shameless appeals to sentimentality and emotionalism have become the principal means by which public opinion is molded. One feels constantly manipulated. And yet it would be cruel, even inhuman, not to be at least slightly moved by the pleas of celebrity sufferers such as Christopher Reeve or Michael J. Fox. There go I, so we think to ourselves, or someone I know, or might know, or might have known. Who could be so heartless as to deny them hope? So let it be stipulated at the outset that modern medicine's achievements have been remarkable and promise to become even more so in the years to come. Yet it takes no prophetic genius to see that medicine can have no cure for the unintended consequences that its progress will surely engender. In the wake of the stem cell controversy, much thought is being given to the moral trade-offs between the promise of medical progress and the multifaceted cannibalization of existing life. Others concern themselves with the problem of distributing medical care fairly and equitably. But I want us to consider for a moment an entirely different concern, one that even the most implacable opponents of embryonic stem cell research did not express. Let us suppose that all of the cannibalization issues can be solved. That, for example, stem cells can be extracted from adults' placental tissues, umbilical cords, and such, without recourse to the destruction of embryos, that pluripotent embryo-like creatures can be concocted, and that all similar issues can be satisfactorily resolved. Let us also suppose, we're doing a lot of supposing here, let us also suppose that all the problems of distributive justice in the provision of health care can also be solved. Suppose, in other words, a technological or political fix can be found to each and every moral dilemma. Would it follow then that the progress of modern medicine would be thereby rendered entirely unproblematic? Or might it not rather be the case that the very meaning of suffering and death and their place in the economy of the human soul would be in the process of being canceled in ways that may be hugely consequential to us? Let me be clear here, I'm not endorsing some kind of moral masochism or suggesting we should all seek to embrace suffering and rush back to a world without anesthesia. Nor am I trying here to invoke religious interdictions, such as the biblical story of the Tower of Babel, that warn us against our effrontery if we cross some invisible line. No, I'm pointing to an inescapable irony at work in the progress of modern medicine, and the fact that the high cost of medical care may be the least of the prices we're going to be paying for it.